Admiral Kim Tae-ho rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the holographic display floating in the center of Earth Defense Command. The alien message had been playing on repeat for hours now, and each time he watched it, the desperation in the strange voices became more clear. These beings from across the galaxy were terrified, and they were begging Earth for help. The message itself was unlike anything humanity had ever received. Strange symbols danced across the display, while alien voices spoke in languages that sounded like music mixed with static. The universal translators worked overtime to make sense of the words, but the meaning was crystal clear. Something called the Devourers had returned to the galaxy after sleeping for thousands of years, and they were eating everything in their path. Commander Park Minna walked up to the Admiral, holding a tablet filled with the latest translation data. Her face was grim as she delivered the news. "Sir, the aliens are calling us Deathworld primitives in the same breath. They're begging us to save them. According to this, their entire military force has been fighting these Devourers for months, and they're losing badly." Kim shook his head in amazement. These alien species had technology that could travel between stars, weapons that could destroy planets, and ships the size of cities. Yet here they were, calling the humans on Earth primitive, while desperately asking for help. The irony wasn't lost on him. Captain Lee Geneseo joined them at the display, his arms full of tactical reports that had been streaming in from across the galaxy. "Admiral, I've been studying their battle reports. Every single species in their galactic council has sent ships to fight. The Zephyrians sent their entire battle fleet. The Crystalline Empire deployed their planet killers. Even the machine races contributed their war platforms, and they're still getting destroyed." The captain pulled up a star map showing the progression of the Devourer advance. Red zones marked dead systems, and the red was spreading fast. "They have no idea what they're asking of us. These aliens have been fighting wars for thousands of years, longer than we've even had space flight. If they can't stop this threat, what makes them think we can?" Admiral Kim studied the tactical data more carefully. The alien fleets fought with precision and order. Their formations were perfect, their strategies textbook examples of military doctrine. But none of it was working against an enemy that seemed to learn and adapt with every battle. Before he could respond, President Yang So-young's voice crackled through the communication system from Seoul. The connection was crystal clear, despite the distance, a testament to humanity's growing technological capabilities. "Admiral Kim, I've been watching the same reports you have. I know what these aliens think of us, but that doesn't matter right now. If the galaxy burns, Earth will burn with it, eventually. Prepare every vessel we have. We're going to war." The Admiral straightened up, feeling the weight of the moment. "Understood, Madam President. We'll mobilize everything." Within the next few hours, emergency broadcasts went out to every nation on Earth that had ships in space. The message was simple, but powerful. Humanity's first test on the galactic stage had arrived, and failure meant extinction for everyone. Dr. Choi Min-jin had spent 3 sleepless days going through the massive files that fleeing alien refugees had transmitted to Earth. What he discovered in those data packets would change how humanity saw itself forever. As he prepared to brief the command staff, his hands shook slightly from both exhaustion and excitement. The briefing room fell silent as Dr. Choi activated the holographic display. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk about why the galaxy calls us Deathworlders, and why they're so terrified of our planet." The first image showed Earth rotating peacefully in space, looking beautiful and serene from orbit. "According to galactic standards, Earth should be completely uninhabitable," he began, pulling up comparison charts. "Our gravity is 3 times stronger than what most alien species consider normal. What feels natural to us would crush the bones of 90% of galactic civilization." Commander Park Mina leaned forward in her chair. "You're saying they physically can't handle our world?" "That's just the beginning," Dr. Choi continued, switching to weather data. Our storms would be classified as weapons of mass destruction on most alien worlds. A Category 1 hurricane has more destructive power than some of their military orbital bombardments, and we consider that mild weather. The room buzzed with murmurs as officers realized what they were hearing. Captain Lee Geneseo asked the question. Everyone was thinking, if our world is so deadly, how do we survive? Dr. Choi smiled and pulled up atmospheric readings. The radiation levels on Earth should have killed all life billions of years ago, according to alien science. Our magnetic field fluctuations alone would fry most of their electronic systems, but we evolved in this environment. What kills them makes us stronger. Lieutenant Park Soo-ben stood up from her workstation, holding a datapad filled with evolutionary comparisons. Doctor, show them the predator-prey analysis. This is the part that really scared me. The hologram shifted to show evolutionary trees from across the galaxy. Here's something that shocked me more than the environmental data, Dr. Choi explained. Almost every intelligent species in the galaxy evolved from prey animals. Herbivores, filter feeders, scavengers. They developed intelligence to hide and avoid conflict. But humans? Lieutenant Park added. We evolved from pack hunters, predators who work together to take down bigger, stronger prey. The aliens have no concept of cooperative hunting or group combat tactics. Admiral Kim studied the data with growing understanding. They think our cities are automated defense systems because they can't imagine a species choosing to live in such a hostile environment. They assume our military installations must be AI-controlled because no living being would voluntarily fight in conditions that would kill them. Dr. Choi nodded grimly. In their records, death worlds are quarantine zones, places where they dump their most dangerous criminals or conduct their most hazardous experiments. The idea that an entire civilization would thrive on such a world is beyond their comprehension. The implications hit everyone in the room at once. Humanity wasn't just different from the galactic community. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. A species that turned the deadliest environments into homes and the most dangerous situations into opportunities. Admiral Kim looked around the room at his officers, seeing them in a new light. Then they're about to get an education in what Deathworlders can really do. The orbital shipyards around Earth had never seen anything like this before. What had once been quiet construction zones filled with routine maintenance work now buzzed with frantic energy. 24 hours a day, welding sparks lit up the darkness of space as thousands of workers raced against time to prepare humanity's response to the galactic crisis. Captain Han Woo-jin floated outside the massive Luna Station shipyard, watching something that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. The Mountain Mover, a ship designed to strip mine asteroids, was being covered in layers of military armor plating. Its industrial mining lasers were being recalibrated as weapons, and its cargo bays were being filled with torpedo tubes. It's incredible, he said to his engineering team over the comm. 6 months ago, that ship was cracking open rocks to harvest metals. Now, it's going to crack open alien warships. All around him, similar transformations were taking place. The luxury cruise liner Pacific Dream was having its elegant dining halls gutted to make room for missile launchers. A massive agricultural transport that usually carried grain between colonies was being fitted with railgun batteries along its entire length. Even the small courier ships that delivered mail between stations were being equipped with suicide charges, and guidance systems. Engineer Shinori was working on the most ambitious conversion of all. The Terra Hauler was a cargo ship the size of a small city, designed to transport entire factory complexes to new colonies. She explained her plan to Captain Han as they watched workers install reinforcement beams throughout the ship's structure. Captain, we're not just adding weapons to this beast. We're turning the entire hull into a kinetic weapon. At maximum speed, this thing will hit with the force of a nuclear bomb. The alien ships won't know what hit them. The captain stared at the massive vessel. You're talking about a suicide mission. Every mission we're planning is a suicide mission, Shin replied matter-of-factly. The difference is, this one will take a lot of enemies with it. Across the solar system, recruitment centers were experiencing something unprecedented. Retired military personnel who had spent years in peaceful civilian careers were dusting off their old uniforms. Admiral Song Haijin, who had been tending a garden on Mars for the past decade, walked into Earth Defense Command and requested immediate reactivation. They gave me command of a passenger liner, she told her old colleagues with a grin. The Stellar Holiday is now the Stellar Vengeance, and she's going to carry 300 fighters and enough firepower to level a moon. The recruitment wasn't limited to military veterans. Ko Donghayan had spent 20 years running cargo between Earth and the outer colonies. His ship wasn't much to look at, but he knew space better than most admirals. When the call went out for volunteers, he didn't hesitate. My crew and I have been hauling freight for decades, he explained to the recruitment officer. Now we're going to haul something different. We're going to haul victory to those aliens who need our help, and we're going to haul destruction to those who threaten them. Within 2 weeks, something miraculous had happened. Earth's small military fleet of 200 ships had grown to over 800 vessels. Mining ships, cargo haulers, passenger liners, research vessels, and even some of the massive generation. Ships that had been preparing for century-long journeys to distant stars had all volunteered for the mission. Every human in space had made the same choice. They would risk everything to save a galaxy that had never accepted them. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like a thunderstorm breaking across the stars. 800 ships of every shape and size dropped out of faster-than-light travel, in perfect formation, their engines creating a light show that could be seen across the entire star system. Captain Lee Minho stood on the bridge of his converted mining vessel, watching as his sensors picked up the alien survivors scattered throughout the asteroid field ahead. What happened next showed just how different humans were from the rest of the galaxy. The moment the alien ships detected the massive human fleet, every single one of them immediately powered up their weapons and raised their defensive shields. Red warning lights flashed across alien bridge screens as automated systems prepared for battle. They think we're here to attack them, Captain Lee observed, watching the defensive formations taking shape among the asteroids. Even though they called for help, their first instinct is to prepare for war against us. Ambassador Kong Sora had been chosen specifically for this moment. As Earth's most experienced diplomat, she had the difficult job of convincing terrified aliens that the Deathworld monsters they feared were actually here to save them. She opened a communication channel, broadcasting on every frequency the aliens might be monitoring. "This is Ambassador Kong Sora of the Earth Defense Fleet," she announced, her voice calm and professional despite the tension. "We received your distress call. We're here to help fight the Devourers." The response came after several long minutes. The lead alien commander's voice came through the universal translators as a series of melodic tones, but the meaning was clear. You actually came. We thought the transmission to your Deathworld was an act of desperation. We never believed the monsters of Earth would travel across the galaxy to help us." There was genuine shock in the aliens' words. These beings had sent out a galaxy-wide plea for help, but they never expected the humans to actually respond. In their minds, Deathworlders were dangerous creatures to be avoided, not potential allies to be trusted. Commander OJ-1 was responsible for coordinating military tactics with the surviving alien forces. As he shared the human battle plans through secured data links, he could hear the sharp intakes of breath from alien commanders reviewing the information. "Your tactical doctrines," one alien officer said, his voice filled with what sounded like horror. "You discuss ramming attacks as if they were routine maneuvers. Your ships carry self-destruct devices as standard equipment. How is this possible?" OJ-1 looked at the tactical display, not understanding why the aliens seemed so disturbed. "These are basic combat procedures. When conventional weapons Fail. You use your ship as a weapon. When capture is inevitable, you deny the enemy your resources by destroying them. The alien commander's response came through as a whisper. You speak of death as if it were just another tool in your arsenal. How do you function with such constant fear of destruction? Captain Lee had been listening to the conversation, and he couldn't help but smile at the alien's misunderstanding. The bridge crew around him chuckled quietly, sharing the same thought. These aliens had completely missed the point of human nature. You've got it backwards, Commander, Lee replied, his voice carrying the confidence that came from generations of human survivors. We don't fear death. We've learned to weaponize it. Fear is what keeps you hiding behind asteroids while your people die. Courage is what brought us here to fight beside you. General Park Chan-ho had been watching the same battle recordings for the past 18 hours, and with each viewing, the picture became clearer and more disturbing. The holographic displays around him showed engagement after engagement between the Devourers and the Galactic Alliance forces, and the pattern was always the same. The aliens would start strong, using their superior technology and coordinated tactics. But by the end of each battle, they were retreating in defeat. Look at this, he said to the mixed group of human and alien officers gathered in the strategy room. The hologram showed a recent battle where a crystalline Empire fleet had engaged a Devourer swarm. The crystallines open with a perfect formation. Their energy weapons are synchronized, their shields are overlapping for maximum protection, and their tactics are textbook perfect. The battle played out in fast motion, showing the initial success of the alien attack. The crystallines destroyed several Devourer ships and seemed to be winning, but then something changed. The enemy began to adapt, learning from each exchange of fire. By the end of the engagement, the Devourers were anticipating every move the crystallines made. They're fighting a civilization war, General Park explained to the stunned alien commanders. Everything about galactic military doctrine is based on preserving resources, minimizing casualties, and maintaining formation discipline. It's the way civilized species have fought for thousands of years. He switched to another battle recording, this time showing the machine races engaging the enemy. The same pattern repeated. Initial success, followed by adaptation, followed by defeat. The Devourers have been studying galactic warfare for months now. They've learned to counter every conventional tactic, every standard formation, every predictable strategy. Lieutenant Kim Vajin had been running computer simulations based on the battle data, testing different scenarios against the Devourer adaptation patterns. Her findings were encouraging, but also terrifying. General, I've been modeling Deathworld tactics against their learning algorithms. The results are interesting. She activated her own holographic display, showing simulated battles where human ships used completely different approaches. Chaos formations, sacrifice plays, using ships as kinetic weapons instead of firing platforms. The Devourer algorithms can't predict our moves because we don't follow any logical pattern. One simulation showed a human fleet breaking apart in the middle of battle, with individual ships attacking from seemingly random directions. Another showed ships deliberately ramming enemy vessels, trading one human ship for 3 or 4 Devourer craft. The alien observers watched in horrified fascination. Colonel Yusanmi stood up to address the room, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had made life-and-death decisions before. Every human ship captain needs to understand something fundamental about this mission. We're not here to preserve our fleet. We're not here to fight a clean war with minimal casualties. We're here to destroy the enemy, no matter what it costs us. She looked directly at the alien commanders, making sure they understood what humanity was offering. Your people have been trying to win this war while keeping most of your forces alive. That's admirable, but it's not working. We're prepared to lose every single ship if it means stopping the Devourers permanently. The alien commanders sat in stunned silence as the humans continued planning their own destruction with the same calm professionalism they used to plan victory. To them, This wasn't reckless bravery or desperate madness. This was simply how death approached an existential threat to the galaxy. The sensors aboard the human flagship began screaming warnings as massive signatures appeared at the edge of the star system. What emerged from hyperspace looked like death itself, spreading across the void. The devourer swarm stretched across hundreds of kilometers, their dark ships absorbing light rather than reflecting it, creating holes in the starfield where they passed. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of the converted colony ship New Sol, watching as his tactical displays filled with enemy contacts. Behind the human fleet, the surviving alien vessels hung back in their careful defensive formations, waiting to see what the Deathworlders would do against an enemy that had defeated every civilized force in the galaxy. "All ships, this is Admiral Kim," he announced across the fleet communication network. "You know what we came here to do? Show these devourers what happens when they threaten innocent people. Attack." Captain Seo Young-ho didn't wait for detailed tactical orders or formation assignments. His ship, the Iron Merchant, had been hauling cargo between colonies just a month ago. Now, it was the first human vessel to charge directly into the heart of the enemy's swarm. He opened his comm to the entire human fleet as his ship accelerated toward certain destruction. "All ships, remember why we're here," Seo's voice carried across the battle frequency. "We're not fighting to live through this. We're fighting so that others can live. Follow me in." The alien observers watched in shock as the human fleet immediately abandoned any semblance of military formation. Instead of maintaining safe distances and coordinated fire patterns, the human ships scattered in all directions, each captain choosing their own target and attack vector. It looked like complete chaos to anyone trained in conventional warfare. Commander Wang Mikyung commanded the mining vessel Rockbreaker, and she knew exactly how to use her ship's industrial equipment in combat, while other vessels might keep their distance and exchange fire safely. She drove her ship directly alongside a massive devourer destroyer, close enough that her mining lasers could cut through their armor like a hot knife through ice. "Target their reactor sections," she called out to her crew as sparks flew around the bridge from enemy return fire. These industrial lasers weren't designed for ship combat, but they'll cut through anything at point-blank range. The devourer ships tried to adapt to the human tactics, but they couldn't understand what they were facing. Their artificial intelligence had learned to counter every form of civilized warfare. But the humans weren't fighting like a civilized species. They were fighting like cornered animals, and cornered animals were unpredictable. Lieutenant Beak Junho monitored the tactical situation from his sensor station aboard the Soul's Hammer. What he saw on his displays defied everything the Devourers had learned about galactic warfare. Human ships were taking massive damage, with some vessels losing half their hull plating and still pressing their attacks. Meanwhile, they were dealing devastating damage to enemy ships that had never faced such reckless aggression. "Admiral, their formation is breaking up," Beak reported with excitement in his voice. "They don't understand our suicide tactics. They keep trying to preserve forces that don't want to be preserved. Their algorithms can't process ships that fight harder when they're damaged." For the first time in decades of galactic warfare, something unprecedented happened. The Devourer swarm, which had never retreated from any battle, began to withdraw from the engagement. Their adaptive intelligence couldn't find a counter for an enemy that treated destruction as just another weapon in their arsenal. As the combined fleet pushed deeper into Devourer-controlled space, the battles became increasingly desperate and brutal. What had started as coordinated engagements now turned into running fights through asteroid fields and around dying stars. The Devourers were learning from each encounter, but so were the humans, and their solutions were becoming more extreme with each passing day. Captain Nam Hoseok found himself commanding a destroyer that had seen better days. The Thunderstrike had taken heavy damage in the previous engagement, with hull breaches on 3 decks and his main engines running at only 60% power. As his ship limped toward a massive Devourer command vessel, he made a decision that would become legendary among both human and alien forces. "Engineering, give me everything you've got in the engines," he ordered over the ship's intercom. "Navigation, plot a collision course with that command ship's reactor section. All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship. Use the escape pods, and get clear." But his crew refused to leave. Chief Engineer Park Woo-sung's voice came back over the comm, steady and determined. "Captain, with respect, we're staying. If you're taking this ship on her final mission, we're going with you." The Thunderstrike accelerated toward the enemy vessel, her damaged hull groaning under the stress. The Devourer ship tried to turn away, but it was too massive and too slow. Nam's destroyer punched straight through the command ship's core, and the explosion that followed lit up the entire battlefield. The sacrifice wasn't an isolated incident. Across the battle zone, human captains were making the same impossible choice over and over again. Captain Lim Sarah commanded a converted colony ship called the New Hope, originally designed to carry 10,000 settlers to a distant world. Now it carried missiles, armor plating, and a crew of volunteers who knew they probably weren't going home when her ship's weapon systems failed, and 3 Devourer cruisers closed in for the kill. She made her choice. Her final transmission went out on all frequencies, reaching both human and alien vessels throughout the system. "This is Captain Lim Sarah of the New Hope. To any aliens listening, remember that humans chose to die for you today. To my fellow humans, tell my family I chose this path freely." She paused, watching the enemy ships growing larger on her view screen, detonating reactor core in 10 seconds. "All nearby vessels, clear the blast zone." The explosion from her ship's deliberate overload destroyed all 3 Devourer vessels and created a gap in their formation that allowed 2 damaged alien cruisers to escape to safety. Commander Jang Yujin was coordinating one of the most dangerous operations of the war. A Devourer attack had trapped thousands of alien civilians on a research station, and the only way to evacuate them was for human ships to serve as mobile shields while transport vessels loaded the refugees. "Listen up, all human vessels in Sector 7, he broadcast to his scattered fleet. "We're going to lose ships here, but we're going to save lives. Each human vessel that gets destroyed buying time means another 1,000 aliens get to see their families again." His own ship, the converted cargo hauler Heavy Lifter, took position directly between the evacuation transports and an approaching Devourer strike force. As enemy fire tore through his hull, he kept his ship in position until the last civilian transport cleared the station. The alien crews throughout the fleet watched these sacrifices with a mixture of awe and horror. In their cultures, death in battle was considered a tragic last resort, but humans seemed to approach it as just another tactical option, choosing it willingly when it served a greater purpose. These acts of sacrifice would be remembered in alien legends for thousands of years. Stories of the Deathworld species that saved the galaxy by embracing the very thing all other species feared most. Dr. An Su-young had been analyzing battle data and psychological reports from both human and alien crews for weeks, trying to understand why humanity was succeeding where every other galactic species had failed. Her conclusions were both fascinating and terrifying, revealing truths about human nature that even humans themselves had never fully understood. "I've been studying our evolutionary history alongside the battle recordings," she explained to the gathered command staff aboard the flagship. The holographic display showed Earth's timeline, stretching back millions of years. Every other species in the galaxy evolved in relatively stable environments. They developed intelligence to avoid conflict, to find safe solutions, to preserve their communities through cooperation and careful planning. She switched the display to show humanity's violent evolutionary path. But Earth never gave us that luxury. We evolved surrounded by death at every turn. Predators that could kill us in seconds, diseases that could wipe out entire tribes, natural disasters that could destroy everything we built. Even our own planet seemed to be actively trying to eliminate us. Admiral Kim studied the evolutionary data with growing understanding. So while other species learned to avoid danger, we learned to fight through it. Exactly, Dr. An continued, pulling up comparative psychological profiles. When a typical galactic species faces a no-win situation, their instinct is to retreat, regroup, and find a safer approach. It served them well for thousands of years. But humans developed a different survival strategy. We learned to thrive in chaos, to turn desperate situations into opportunities. The battle recordings played in the background, showing human ships engaging in tactics that would be considered insane by galactic standards. Ships with failing life support systems pressed attacks instead of retreating. Vessels surrounded by overwhelming enemy forces chose to fight rather than surrender. Captains with no hope of survival found ways to take enemies with them. The Devourers were designed to counter logical military thinking, Dr. An explained. Their artificial intelligence learned from every conventional tactic used against them: defensive formations, strategic retreats, preservation of resources, careful positioning. They developed counters for all of it, because that's how civilized warfare is supposed to work. Lieutenant Commander Song Jaemin had been monitoring Devourer communication patterns during recent battles. Doctor, we've intercepted some of their tactical broadcasts. Their systems are showing error messages when they try to process our combat behavior. They literally cannot understand why we fight harder when we're losing. The perfect example came during the next engagement, when Captain Yoon Taemin found his converted freighter Star Runner completely surrounded by Devourer vessels. His weapons were gone, his engines were failing, and his hull was breached in dozens of places. Any rational commander would have surrendered or attempted to retreat. Instead, Captain Yoon made a choice that demonstrated the fundamental difference between humans and every other species in the galaxy. All hands, prepare for reactor overload, he announced calmly to his crew. We're taking these aliens with us. His ship's explosion destroyed 4 Devourer vessels and damaged 2 more, creating a gap in their formation that allowed other human ships to escape. The Devourer, artificial intelligence, had no programming to understand such behavior. In their calculations, damaged ships should retreat, not become more dangerous. The other species adapted to fear, Admiral Kim observed as he watched the tactical recordings. They learned to survive by avoiding dangerous situations, by being careful and calculated in everything they do. He turned to address his staff, and there was something almost predatory in his smile. But humans are different. We didn't adapt to fear. We weaponized fearlessness. We turned our willingness to die into the most powerful military advantage the galaxy has ever seen. The Devourers had learned to counter civilization, but they had never encountered a species that thrived on the edge of extinction. The final battle for the Devourer Central Nexus was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Captain Go-Yun looked around at what remained of humanity's once mighty fleet, and felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. Of the 800 ships that had answered the galactic distress call months ago, only 47 were still capable of fighting. But those 47 ships carried the hopes of an entire galaxy. The Devourer's stronghold was a massive structure built from the remains of consumed worlds. Stretching across hundreds of kilometers of space, it pulsed with dark energy, coordinating the attacks of millions of Devourer ships throughout the galaxy. Every military expert agreed that destroying it would require a fleet of thousands, with weapons that could crack planets. All remaining vessels. This is Captain Go, she announced over the fleet communication system. We've come this far together, and we're going to finish this together. Final ramming attack on the Nexus core, full speed, no survivors. Her own ship, the battered mining vessel Iron Will, had been running on backup power for days. Half her crew was dead, her weapons were destroyed, and her hull was held together by emergency patches. But her engines still worked, and that was all she needed. The remaining human ships formed up for one last charge. There were no fancy tactics, no complex maneuvers. Just 47 vessels accelerating toward the heart of the enemy stronghold, at maximum speed. Their reactors overloading to provide extra power for this final sacrifice. The impact was visible across 3 star systems. The combined mass of the human ships, traveling at incredible velocity, punched straight through the Nexus core and triggered a chain reaction that tore the entire structure apart. The explosion sent shockwaves through subspace, and suddenly, Devourer ships throughout the galaxy simply stopped functioning. Weeks later, President Yang So-young stood in the Great Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, surrounded by representatives from hundreds of worlds. These were the same beings who had once called humans Deathworld monsters, too dangerous to be allowed into civilized space. Now they were offering Earthful membership in their galactic community. Honored representatives, President Yang began, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. Months ago, you sent a desperate message to our world. You called us Deathworld monsters in the same breath that you begged for our help. She paused, letting her words sink in. You were right about us being monsters. Earth is a world that breeds warriors, because only warriors can survive there. But we're your monsters now. We've proven that sometimes, the galaxy needs dangerous friends. The applause was thunderous, coming from beings whose worlds had been saved by human sacrifice. Admiral Kim, one of only 12 human fleet commanders to survive the war, stepped forward to accept the galaxy's Medal of Ultimate Sacrifice, the highest military honor that could be bestowed. We didn't come here to prove we weren't dangerous, he said, holding the medal that represented the lives of thousands of his fellow humans. We came here to prove that dangerous people can choose to use their strength to protect those who can't protect themselves. Back on Earth, construction had begun on a massive memorial wall in Earth Defense Command. The wall would eventually list over 50,000 names, humans who had chosen death so that alien civilizations they had never met could continue to live. Each name represented someone who had looked into the face of extinction and chosen to fight rather than flee. The memorial's inscription was simple. They were called Deathworlders, and they saved us all, throughout the galaxy, in languages that humans couldn't pronounce and on worlds that humans had never seen. The same story was being told. The story of the species from the deadly world who had traveled across the stars not to conquer, but to save. The Deathworlders who had weaponized their own fearlessness and used it to protect the innocent.